Welcome to our presentation on the importance of the murli. The purpose of our package is to highlight the importance and power of the murli. We will be looking at purpose, practical applications, delivery, cultural connections, and what to do after the murli. This will be supported through insightful experiences from experienced BK teachers.
Om Shanti. As spiritual teachers, we have the responsibility to connect the content of the murli to the background and to the present needs and circumstances of the Western student. It's about making them aware of parallel analogies and scriptural references that arise in their own particular traditions. Many of Bapdada's instructions and types of advice were connected to situations and occurrences that were happening in and around the yagya at that particular time. This should be, if possible, be researched and made clear to the student. Occasionally the murli makes many very general statements, often not followed by any clear explanation, and then quickly moves on to another point. For a new student, this can be quite confusing. Thus, the teacher needs to recognize these sections and give context and clarity wherever possible. For the Western student, the murli, because of its unusual phraseology and structure, is a document to be carefully approached and dissected for meaning, context and understanding. So we hope our training will go some way in helping Brahman teachers to master this skill and enable students to draw deep from the power and the magic that is the murli.
Om Shanti. It's wonderful to know that there are so many new students engaged in studying Baba's knowledge and now are beginning the Murlis. And so I want to say thank you to all those wonderful teachers who have been instruments to make this happen. Baba has a lovely expression for teachers. He says, "They are my equals, they are my friends, because I come to teach, and my children who take on the role and responsibility of teaching are my equals." It's wonderful to be able to introduce others to the beauty of the murli. The Sakar murli sometimes takes a little bit of effort in terms of how I understand the depth to ensure that new people don't take the ideas of the murli, especially in the Sakar murli, too literally. We have to gently make them aware that yes, it's a journey, it's a path. And so, for example, when we talk about detachment, it's not cutting off from your family and friends, but the detachment is the inner detachment from my own skin, from my own body. So there are different concepts coming up in the murlis that we need to go into the depth of. And as we do that, we begin to see how we ourselves are applying these in our lives. And then we know better how to explain them to others also. I know that there's many factors about Hinduism that come in, but that's okay, because there are equally similar systems and customs in most of the other traditions. For example, the concept of a rebirth, that comes in everywhere. The concept of water as a symbol for purification, again, that comes in everywhere. So we just need to see the connection with other traditions and help them apply that. And of course, the deeper my love for Baba, the deeper my love for the murli, the greater my own experience of yoga. And that's how I'll introduce this to others also. Avyakt murlis are a fantastic mirror. And so again, as I use the murli for my own personal development, that's the experience I share with all those whom I'm the instrument to teach. So all good wishes and much love, and thank you.
The purpose of the murli. Its prime purpose is to change our thinking, attitude, and behaviour through spiritual understanding. It awakens the soul to its essential form and nature. It provides the knowledge and understanding of the unique form and consciousness of the Supreme Soul. It clarifies how meditation, or remembrance, empowers the soul, enabling it to change and move forward. The murli also clarifies what is devotion and what is the meditation of Raj Yoga. It provides daily guidelines and advice on how to live a spiritual life in a world that is governed by the illusions of body consciousness. It reminds the students that it is now the confluence age and that the old iron age is now coming to an end. The murli informs the students that by following Srimat and having regular remembrance, you become Brahmins. Through this practice, we then create the necessary nature and vibrations to take the soul into the new coming golden age.
Om Shanti, Sister Sharona here. And before I share with you a few of my thoughts on the deep purpose of Murli, I'd like to show you a short video extract, if that is, I can figure out the technology. Yes, here she is. Yes.
You're so cute. Really? Did you have a good Christmas? Did you? Did you get everything you wanted? Was Santa good to you? Yeah? I'm glad you had fun. I'm glad you had a good time.
Okay. So, what did we see? We saw a little baby, and we didn't see the mother, but we could hear her. And it was a very happy baby. So, what was making this baby so happy? Was it what the mother was literally saying? No, because babies don't understand language at that age. But definitely there was another language going on between them, a vibrational language, like an exchange of energy. And baby was so happy because it was an energy of connectedness, of belonging. So how does this connect to Murli? Perhaps some of you know where I'm going with this, but I have come to feel that the deepest purpose of Murli is to satisfy the deepest longing in the human heart, which is this experience of belonging. Love, true love, reliable, steady, permanent love. For so many lifetimes, we would have been looking for that in people and in situations unsuccessfully. And all the garbage in the soul that we're dealing with today as a result of that. So, how great this Murli, which gives me the chance to expose myself to this most essential, beautiful energy of God's love. We need to learn how to sit in Murli and open ourselves to this subtle language, because it is subtle. We shouldn't get too caught up in words. like, was this translated? What about that translation? And this point, that point. I mean, it's important what Baba's saying, but as important, if not more important, especially in the beginning, is what's the energy inside those words and the energy between the lines. As much as it's important to deeply realize who's speaking these words, it's important to realize who's listening to these words. I, the child, the eternal soul child, am listening. And it's also so important to understand, why is he speaking these words? It's really just to give us time, be together, show and expose us to this belonging and this connectedness. So try to get to Murli 15 minutes before, so you have the time to tune up into those higher vibrations. Try to get to Murli in person, so you're in the same room with the gathering and the Murli reader. Those vibrations will also help you come into that experience of the belonging. And also, if nothing else, of course, there's a Murli to read, but reading is actually the least effective in exposing us to these beautiful vibrations, because reading is a left brain phenomena, and what we're talking about here is a thoroughly heart-centered right brain phenomena. So like this, in the way that this baby's identity is being shaped very naturally just by being in the presence of that belonging vibration, and in a very natural way, mommy is the whole world of this baby. So as we learn to sit in Murli accurately in soul consciousness, very naturally our new identity as souls, eternal and direct children of God, takes shape very easily. And also very naturally, God becomes my whole world. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti and good morning. We are teacher because we have recognized God as the supreme teacher, and we have recognized that God, the supreme soul, is giving the new true knowledge through Brahma. And now as a teacher we have the Murli to study. And in fact the main quality of a teacher is I love to study, and also the dedication, the full dedication to the direction of what God is telling us every day. Based on that, we have the great pleasure to share whatever we learn and understand from the Murli. We just enjoy to share, but also we know and we feel deeply that we have the duty, the responsibility, the mission to share that with the world. And also that is part of our pleasure, because it's given us a level of authority as well, and a very beautiful role to play and to express. Then concerning our daily life, when we walk in the street, we are absolutely incognito. We don't have any external sign of being someone particular or to be the assistant teacher of the supreme teacher. But as soon as we enter in our daily social life, such as family, job, field of service, or daily social life, usual context in which we are part of, obviously at some point we cannot hide the fact that we are really different than anyone else, everyone else, because of our way of life, because of our attitude, because of our way to relate to people, because of our principle. But the thing is, instead of creating a separation, because we have so many goodness, value, virtue, I mean, just to mention just some of them, the peace, the non-violence, the gentleness, the care of the others, the love, the positivity, the accuracy, to make sure that we, whatever, the job we have to do, we make it properly, accurately. Okay, and also because this spiritual knowledge is given us one main powerful point, which is no matter which people is in front of us, we have something so powerful in common, in essence. And he is a soul, I am a soul, we are the same, and that allows us to relate so easily, to connect easily, and so to be appreciated and to be respected by the other, and also for myself to express my respect and love and recognition to the other. And that allows us to be fully accepted by any human being in the world. Om Shanti.
Delivery of the murli. Reading the murli is allowing students to access into Baba's world of spiritual truth. As teachers, we are trustees of this knowledge. The murli is not a personal platform for personal opinions and ideas. There is a need to practice and check on your personal style of delivery. Is your voice boring, monotone, or lively and interesting? Ensure eye contact is with the whole class, not becoming fixed on certain individuals. Ensure clothing and personal jewellery is not too distracting. Do you have mannerisms that may be distracting? Keep checking in with your students about volume and speed of delivery. Perhaps have fellow teachers observe and help refine your delivery.
Om Shanti. These are just a few thoughts on the consciousness we should have when reading the murli. From my experience, the consciousness remains and becomes even firmer of being a student and a humble instrument. Baba is speaking directly to all, including me during the murli. Therefore, I am a student. How much of what is being spoken have I imbibed? When I have imbibed what Baba is teaching, then there is the authority to share from one's own experience, and it will then be accepted by others as authentic. We know that what we explain from the murli only carries power if we have used it or experimented with it ourselves. And this is a responsibility that comes with reading the murli. So I'm not speaking from a consciousness of being a teacher or of teaching, but rather of sharing my experience with my brothers and sisters. And for me, this requires having the vision of brotherhood. We are all students and there is only one teacher. Sometimes during speaking the murli, you can visualize the self up in the subtle regions in front of Bab-Dada, or even in the history hall of Madhuban, seated on the floor in front of Bab-Dada, or even on the globe, on top of the globe, reading murli to the world as a humble instrument connected to one, allowing God's words to flow. So this is just a few thoughts on the consciousness as we read the murli. Thank you. Om Shanti.
We learn in the murli that God is a unique personality with a very specific purpose to achieve at this time, and that is to guide souls as to how to recover their original quality, their original truth. And that is in order to fit us for a forthcoming age of unbroken peace and happiness. And this outcome is guaranteed within this never-ending wheel of time, but not everyone can respond to this call. Even among those who do, the work of dropping our old ideas and attachments and embodying the new awareness takes continuous daily attention. This has very much been my experience. So it helps enormously to recognize that the murli is personal and loving and wise. It addresses each of us individually, and it's directed towards us by the Supreme Soul with real focused love. It doesn't just represent some kind of omnipresent energy or unconditional love. There's a job that the Supreme is doing. God uses the experience that Brahma embodies to inform and encourage and uplift us. So sometimes the voice that comes through is that of the Supreme, and sometimes it sounds much more like the chariot, Brahma. The two really do work together. And this creates an immense richness as well as making it very practical. It's not just a disembodied soul addressing us, but a combination of the human and the divine, and both souls willing us intensely to understand and to change. And though listening to this murli daily for nearly 40 years, my own understanding and outlook have been transformed over time from rough stone to something beginning to look and feel like diamond. Om Shanti.
How to experience and use the murli. The murli is an ongoing live and practical form of advice and guidance for each day of BK life. There are many ways to use the murli in everyday life, and this is helped when those listening to the murli proactively find ways to remember specific points and aspects. Some ways are note-taking, using mind maps, creating lists, drawing symbols, or even creating a picture of the murli. The teacher can encourage the students to experiment with different ways, allowing the students to find the way that is most helpful for them to access and remember the murli. We all know that anything done regularly has an impact on our life, and it is the same with the murli. Daily murli has an impact on our consciousness, and so encouragement from the teacher for the students to come into the gathering and listen to the murli. Being with fellow students and hearing their inspirations from the murli keeps the intellect alert and engaged. When the murli is not given importance, it is easy for the old sanskaras and attitudes to creep back in and take over our consciousness. Notes taken during the murli can be revised during the day and also form the basis for meditation, thus keeping the natural nature of peace and love and happiness active so that we progress spiritually.
Hello and greetings from Montreal in Canada. This is Brother Eric. Happy to share just some points on my relationship with the murli, and I think like most BKs, the murli is, a magic land. Not only we want to become professional flute players, but we want to benefit from the sound of the flute. So yes, murli is definitely one of the most important part of personally my Brahmin life or my spiritual journey, I see so many incredible things in the murli, but I know for myself that the murli is 10 times more real and present when I read it in front of the class. I read it by myself, I listen to it online. It takes a lot of effort to extract the magic of it. When we read it in front of the class, we know we're privileged. Baba is helping, and the magic of the drama makes it such that the murli becomes very, very alive. Just because of keeping it very short, I would say that for me, there are 5 things I try to pay attention to. There are a little bit 5 traps in my experience in reading the murli. One is when I try to infantilize the concept or look as if I'm a big teacher and I'm talking to kindergarten kids. So I think it's a danger sometimes to infantilize, to be a little bit childish in the way we convey some points or talk to the group, or to play a little bit with students as if they were little children. I think honesty and humility is very important in that. Not to take my own ideas and beef them up too much in such a way that I make my ego a voice in the murli. And the second aspect is not to have over intoxication. It's very tempting when reading the murli to go really, really high. But then, we become flat again a few hours later. So when reading the murli, I try to moderate my intoxication. And for this, yes, it's the value of maturity, to be, connecting with Baba properly. The third trap I find is to make the murli too dramatic. Younger, I remember I used to, play Dharamraj when I was reading the murli, or you think of someone with a specific point, and so you underline it very deeply. So that is making it a little bit over dramatic. Drama is enough, no need to make it dramatic. And for that, I find that detachment is good. It's a good quality. We're not attached to our own interpretation of the murli. So we just present it as is, and we don't need to make it over dramatic, not to increase the need for yoga more than Baba is doing it himself in the murli. He's perfect flute player. And the last, or the other aspect I found a trap is to make it too intellectual. It's very important to keep it simple. We don't need to make points dogmatic. I think if they remain godmatic, it's fine. So keep it simple. The knowledge for me is it's beautiful as it is. And the last trap is to alter the knowledge. For this, I find that quality requires is very, very much honesty again. Sometimes we want to play with knowledge, which is beautiful, but we shouldn't alter it, and we should keep it to its sort of original format. Murli is just a flute that makes us dance, so our role is just to help other people to dance properly by playing the flute that Baba has been giving us. Lots of love, Om Shanti to everyone.
I think a question for us is how to keep the murli magical. It's so important that the murli is really like a dance for us, and that it lights us up when we listen, because it is absolutely the seed of our spiritual day. And so important for us to enjoy it, to find it stimulating, for it to stretch us. These are really, really important for us, so that it doesn't become ordinary and mundane. And how to do that, that's our challenge. For me, I think it's what happens between one murli and the next, that I pay attention to my consciousness, that I give time to think about what I've heard in the murli, and also to make sure that I'm applying Baba's words in my daily life, because we all have challenges, and sometimes we look for solutions from human beings. And I find that most of the time, in fact, all of the time, the solutions actually come from Baba's knowledge. And this keeps Baba's knowledge very relevant in my life, and something that, I look forward to. It's something I wouldn't miss, because a day without the murli is like an emptiness. It's there to sustain us, to help us to grow, and to be able to also transform, the most important thing. And for us to find those golden threads that run throughout each murli. And that golden thread is what Baba is saying to me personally, that it's relevant in my life. Very, very important. And I need soul consciousness for that. Thank you.
After the murli. Often, if the murli is left uncommented upon, it will have less chance to impact and embed in the student's subconscious. Revising and linking aspects to present needs, circumstances, and situations will make it real and enable the students to have realization that the murli is a working, relevant, and important spiritual document. By asking questions and creating discussion, automatically and naturally there is engagement and interest. As students begin to hear how others are thinking and using the murli, they will grow in confidence and inspiration. It is important for the teacher to be positive and complimentary towards contributions. As teachers, it is important to try and not to give a class or comment too much on what is said, as this can intimidate students, feeling their points are not so important and that they are being assessed. Sometimes, the use of a flip chart to record main points can be helpful in recall and later revision, and also that it can encourage students seeing their comments written up, making them feel more confident and better about themselves. For the Western teacher, there needs some acknowledgement and understanding of the background of where many of the students are coming from. The influence of New Age thinking, of mindfulness, pervasive omnipresence, veganism, values-based thinking and attitudes, most of which are all generally a mismatch from many of the main religious belief systems. So knowing some of this background can be very helpful when clarifying and connecting.
Hi, my name's Samantha and I've come here today to talk about the cultural references in the murli and how to really introduce those to new students. What I found over the years is that there can be a gap between when they finish the course and when they then come to a murli class, because what they'll find are words that they've never ever heard before. So very useful to have a glossary available so that they can make reference to that. But I know for myself, what I've often done is I've often outlined the most common words that they'll hear practically every day so that they become familiar. And I've often found that the words themselves are not really an issue because there are resources to help students understand the meaning of things like Satapratan and Tamapratan, etc. But I think some of the issues may come around the stories and the significance of the stories. And what I had to do, I had to make myself familiar with those stories. And for many years, I was living in Africa, teaching meditation there. And most of our participants were Catholic. So, of course, the Hindu mythology really had no relevance to them. But what was important was that Africa has a storytelling culture, and so I was able to introduce those Hindu references in the form of a story and explaining the spiritual significance and even comparing some of those stories to some of the African stories that I'd heard. And so that's one thing. And I think it's very important to familiarize ourselves with those stories. And I used to go to Google to do that, but now we also have a few publications that I was given them, and one is called Storytime. And in this book is a whole range of stories about different references that is made in the Murli. And so often Baba talks about King Harishchandra. There's a whole story about that. Hanuman, the Mahavir, a whole story about that and what it means. And so this is one reference. There may be more, and I'm sure you can find those out. But one of the most important things I feel is to check my own understanding of those stories and whether I have a block to those cultural references, because if I do have a block, then definitely the students are going to have a block too, and that subtle energy will be transferred to them. And I think the most important thing really is to explain the meaning, but to really outline that the stories tended to support a point of knowledge that Baba was explaining, and not to get stuck in the stories. But at the same time, there are some people who learn better through stories. And so I think that's a sign of how great a teacher Baba is, that he explains the point, but then uses a familiar story for those from the Hindu faith to illustrate that point. And so I think it's a journey for new students, and to introduce a few words at a time, but to really get the essence and keep the essence of the main teachings of Baba's Murli, so that they don't get lost in the expansion that can often happen. So I do hope that was useful, and good to be here with all of you.